Hey guys, David Holder with Raised Hunting, and hopefully you've already seen the video that we did on choosing stand locations, and particularly when I say choosing stand location, I'm talking about a tree stand and where to put it. And some of the terrain issues that we look for that drive that: funnels, field edges, food sources. Those are just some. But I want to talk a little bit about ground blinds and why I would tell you, first of all, that you want to have a ground blind in your arsenal. I love hunting out of ground blinds. And if you don't have one, you're missing some great places to hunt. Now, I talked about in the tree stand video, I'm not a big food source guy. One of the reasons why is because when you're hunting on a food source, you got to get in and out of that location without the deer knowing that you're there. And the problem is that when you're hunting that food source, it's usually drawing deer there, especially in the evenings, and now you got to slip out of there. Tree stands can be a lot of noise going up and down the tree. You're exposed because you're up in the tree. But putting a ground blind or putting some type of blind, hard-sided blind even, on a food source, and then making some kind of barrier between your food source and your blind, such as round bales, such as Egyptian wheat, or growing something, or pushing brush up against it, you might have a way where you can get in and out of there, them never know you're there. And I mean, I can tell you, we've had situations where I've had a pop-up ground blind on a food source, on a food plot, small half-acre food plot. Deer were in the field feeding, but I had planted Egyptian wheat that I could walk. I came up out of a creek bottom, had about 15, 20 yards to go to the edge of that Egyptian wheat, slipped right into the blind. The deer never even picked up their heads. They were still feeding in the field. So it can be done. It just takes some work to do it. But if you don't have a ground blind in your arsenal, you need to have one, because not only do they work on food sources, but I'll use ground blinds. There are times when you find a place inside the timber. So I talked a little bit about in the tree stand in different funnels, different transition zones. And I can give you one particular time where I was hunting a field edge to start off out of a ground blind, no place to put a tree stand. Karen was the hunter, and we're sitting there on the edge of a cornfield. We're seeing all kinds of deer, but they're not in the field that we're feeding on. They're cutting the corner of two fields, and what they're doing is going behind our blind. And we probably saw 15, 20 deer the day before go behind our blind, but they were all with what would have been within shooting range, could have shot out of the back of our blind. So you got two options there. What do? I made the strategic move that here's what we're going to do. We're going to leave that blind in place, and I'm going to put another blind inside the timber. And what I did was I found a fallen tree, and these deer were going right by that fallen tree. We shoved that blind in there, put it in there, brushed it in a little bit, and the very next day we were in that blind. Now I know a bunch of you out there are going, you can't do that with a ground blind. You cannot, if you don't brush it in like completely and make it disappear, they're going to pick it off, and it's going to take a week or two for them to get used to it. Well, I can tell you, we were in that blind the next day, and to this day, that might be the best day I've ever had whitetail hunting ever. I think Karen and I saw over 100 deer. We saw like 25 different bucks. We saw 3 shooter bucks before she finally killed one in the afternoon at like 4 o'clock, and we got in the blind at 5 in the morning. So just to give you an idea, we did brush it in when I slid it in there, but we hunted it right away. We were in there immediately. We were not on a field edge. We weren't on a food source. We were probably 60 yards off of the food and 60 yards off of a power line. And it was a corner that those deer were transitioning out of the food source, going through a bedding area, going to a whole nother farm, and we were catching them going through there. So ground blinds can be great. Pop-up blinds, not pop-up blinds, but hard-sided blinds can be another one, because not only do they give you usually a way to get elevated a little bit in your blind because you put them on a tower or something like that, but they also give you that ability to hunt them in the crappiest weather. You can be out there where and not that you can't do that in a pop-up blind, because most of them, at least the ones we use, and again, I'm not here forcing you to go buy a certain type of blind, but without a doubt, double bull makes the best most durable soft-sided blind, pop-up style blind that I have used. And so that's the one I always choose, because it does last through the weather. I can get in there and it lasts year after year. But there's lots of ones out there you can pick from, so I'm not telling you which one you should buy. So anyhow, getting back to why I put those blinds though, so I like food source. That's one place that I said I don't like hunting, but when it comes to a ground blind, I'll use them. I like them because I can use them in the timber and I can brush them in and things like that. The other thing that I like about them is it can get me in places where if you just can't get a tree stand, meaning you're in timber, but the trees are small. Maybe it's young stuff that was replanted a few years ago or something like that. Or you got a clear cut, which can be super, especially in the South and the East, where I used to live in Virginia and Arkansas. Lots of places. I didn't have a ground blind back then. I look back now and there's so many places that I would have been hunting had I had a ground blind. So keep that in mind when you're looking for things that, you're going this year into it. You got 3 or 4 tree stands, and you're like, man, I probably need to get another tree stand. Maybe instead of buying another tree stand, you need to buy a ground blind so that you can be versatile and use it. But I will say this, that you got to get used to hunting them. You got to believe in them, and because otherwise, if you don't have confidence of shooting out of one and sitting in one, they engulf you and you can't see everything like you can out of a tree stand. You're on the ground, you're eye level. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you got to take into account. But I promise you, if you start hunting out of a ground blind like I do, it will make you a better hunter. You have to be, because the ground blind has so many things going against it as well. But the biggest one is you being able to sit in a place where you just can't hunt with a tree stand. A ground blind can open that up. So keep that in mind for hunting some of those locations. So that's what I think about the ground blinds, guys. I would tell you they're just as important as a tree stand. Hope this helped you. Hope you kill a big buck. And I promise you, if you just see a big buck out of one of those ground blinds, it's going to feel like he's right on top of you because your heart's going to be pounding out of your chest. Thanks for watching.